That's, what I'm not live is, oh, here we go, Granicus.
No, that doesn't?
All right, are we ready to go,
Okay.
committee?
Like it or not, we're on.
All right, I want to call the Finance Committee meeting of 6 May to order. All members are present and accounted for. They're on the agenda. I don't see that FT.
What FT?
The one that was for, it went away. It went away.
Right,
Okay.
you took no action yesterday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, I should be seeing it. Are there any amendments to the agenda, or is there a motion to accept it as written?
Mr. Chair, I was asking that we put on the agenda a discussion on COVID-19 funding that's coming to the city. And I was trying to ask our city manager, Gerald, if he was comfortable kind of reiterating the purpose of that money, so that we and the community are clear and we won't make any assumptions about it.
That is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And the reason for this relevance to the budget for fiscal 21 is because of our discussion about what do we need to do about thinking about out-year impacts of the pandemic and how it could potentially affect this fiscal 21 budget. If the numbers that we're hearing are correct, it's a sizable sum of money, and I think it's entirely appropriate for us to discuss that and conceivably make recommendations to the council from our report. So all those in favor of the agenda as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. You? Okay.
Aye.
All right. So we now have minutes from the meeting of May 4th before us for approval.
Move approval of the minutes as written.
I'll second that, even though I haven't seen them.
Okay, well, they are attached to our agenda. I want to make a note in passing because I talked with Takia about this earlier this morning. The minutes for yesterday will be much more elaborate because I want to include in those minutes our section by section vote on the ordinance 16-20. And at some point, and conceivably it'll be in yesterday's minutes, our votes on fees and fines. It seems to me that we do need to clean up today, one of the things, a vote on the pay schedule. And I would look to the finance director. Are there any other legislative things? So we've got the ordinance, the two resolutions, the schedule, pay schedule, which is unchanged from last year at this point. Are there any other, Kia has her hand raised.
Yeah, you didn't complete 016 yesterday. I just want to remind you.
Oh, I know we didn't, but
Okay.
I'm saying, in terms of the committee voting on and making recommendations on things that would be part of the legislation, is there anything, I'm trying to think if there's anything we did in the past that we are missing. It seems to me like we've got it all. Oh, grants, community grants, but I guess community grants are subsumed in 016, are they not? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
So the big pieces are the three pieces of legislation, and by assumption in the ordinance, we pick up a vote on the capital budget and the CIP, but we also took a separate vote on that. So I hope by the end of the day, we'll be done with all of our legislative actions that we need to take votes on and recommend to the council.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when we vote on, what is it, the first section of the 016, you mentioned community grants. So community grants are within that first section. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in that first section.
Right. So if we approve that section, is it for the total 429,000 that we're talking about, or is it the specifics of the grant?
So just to be clear, we only recommend approval of that. I have a feeling I'm not prepared to approve it as is, at least not without some more deliberation on our parts for things like the COLA, like the community grants. There's a number of other pieces that are in there. Takia has her hand raised. And by the way, in 026, we're also approving appendices A, B, and C. So there's an awful lot in that section 1.
Yeah, I just wanted to say before you guys moved on, can you take a vote on the minutes? You did the motion in a second.
We have our methods. We're getting there. So we have a motion to amend the agenda to discuss potential relief through the county for the COVID-19. And I think there's a second. Is there any?
You already voted on that.
I know. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right. And then we were really in the middle of the minutes, and we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We're now ready to get into the agenda. The first item on the agenda is a discussion of the hiring freeze. Fred, do you want to take that up now, or do you want to get into finishing off the ordinance?
Let's finish off the ordinance.
All right, I agree. Is that okay with you, Sheila?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So let's move back to our budget books to 016. It seems to me that we have a few pieces of unfinished business. We do need to hear from the city attorney on the legal sections 25, 27, and 28 at the end. We do need to approve section 23, which are the tax rates. If I'm correct. No, section 26 is the tax rate. And then I think we need to get back to the biggie, which is section 1. Can we take the discussion of the tax rate, section 23 next?
Mr. Chair, did we do 21? Or are we just skipping around?
No, I think we.
No, you finished up to 20 yesterday.
Oh, we didn't? We only finished through 20?
Yes.
No,
You did 22, 23, and 24 first, but after that, the last one you left off of was 20.
So we still need to do 21, and then
Right.
we'll skip over to 20.
And then you would go to 25, exactly.
Yeah, we
All right.
did 3.
No, I don't think we did. Oh, 23, yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yes, you
Yeah.
did. You did 22,
All right.
23, and
What
24
is it that
together.
Let's try to take these in order. Section 20. I thought we had taken a vote on that. That's the.
You did section 20.
Pardon me?
You did section 20, so you're on 21 right now
Okay.
if you're going to
So
go in order.
21 is Appendix C, which is the anticipated revenue. We've talked about this off and on. This is all that detail where we get in the money for arts and public places and grants funding of. By the way, why is grants funding in Schedule C 6 million and elsewhere total grants funding is 6.3?
Are you confusing revenues with expenditures?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Oh, wait a minute. No,
Well,
wait a minute. Page 23.
Chief Herman's on too.
Where's the grant total?
Right.
Page 23, right? Nope, that's the fund balance. The grants detail is
In Appendix C?
But when we get to the
Well,
higher
but
page, 24 maybe.
there's a
Only if they have a question.
summary of them up front too.
Yeah, there's one of these sections has the grants in it.
So that they can see that they're there. So
But this is a summary page, right? Appendix
You
C
guys are the same.
summarizes all of the grants and it's 6 million.
Oh, Ellie's up.
I thought I saw a number of
I'm guessing.
6.3.
6.3 is the appropriations.
So how can the appropriations be for more than the revenue?
Appendix B is the grant list, Appendix B.
B.
But if you go back to what you're actually looking at in section, what you're trying to vote on in section 21, that refers to Appendix C because Appendix C is the revenue. What you're doing here is saying that these are the anticipated revenues and uses of fund balance as shown in Appendix C. If you're going to make comments on that
Legal manager.
separately or approve that separately, this is where you would want to do it.
I know. That was not joke.
But
The
my-
grant funds are a piece of that. The grant funds are a piece of that as revenues.
All right, I am thoroughly confused because in Appendix B, which is also on page 29, we're showing grants appropriated of $6.3 million. But in Appendix C, we're only showing grant revenue of $6 million.
6051, because that's how we're matching it up. There are grant funds left unspent from this year that are rolling into next year. So we're appropriating all of the pieces, anything that's rolling forward, and new funds. And what you're seeing there is new revenue, fund balance appropriated. Let me check on this because
I guess the question is, where's the 3,000?
Now Chief Jackson's on.
Where's the difference?
I'm gonna have to look at that more carefully. I'm wondering why those two with the fund balance piece in there wouldn't be equal.
Yeah, it's off by $254,990.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason for it. Either there could be a mistake somewhere, but I'm gonna have to look into that.
Okay, so we will have to defer or depending upon how tight we get to the report needing to be written, we could reference this as something that the council at large would have to take a look at. Putting clips.
Okay, so are we now on 25?
Well, we are not taking a vote on 21 at this point, if I'm
Right.
understanding. See page.
So that gets a question mark and not a check. And the next item is 25, where we need Mr. Lyles online.
Let me get back to the legislature.
Carrie Berger will be on in place of Mr. Lyles.
Who will be,
Carrie.
she needs to be here then.
No, she's coming in.
Oh, okay, thank
All
you.
right. So, yes, you're right. The next one is, I thought we voted on 23. That was just recognizing that we're taking that 1.5 million out of the cap, the CIP for last year.
We did vote on 23 and 24, so we're now on 25.
Well, 25, 27, and 28, we need to have Mr. Lyle here for it. So I think we're now at 26, which sets the property tax and personal property tax rates for fiscal 21, which are the same as they were for fiscal 20, if I'm correct. They're unchanged. And this is really the biggie. This is actually the only thing that we really have to do in a timely fashion because we need to get this to the state so they can collect it. Although I would say my assumption is if we don't get this to them, they'll just collect what they've been collecting already, which is the same as this. But nevertheless, we try in good form to get this voted on in the first meeting in June so we can get it to the state.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve section 26, city property tax rate.
Okay. Alderman Payon,
Yes, sir.
are you going to be seconding this or do I need to?
I think you need to.
All right. I will second it for the sake of discussion, but I am interested if you care to share with us your reservations on this. Alderman Payon.
Okay. Well, plain and simple, I think the tax rate's too high. I think the budget's too high. And I'm not going to approve it. But people in my ward are getting taxed to death. At least they perceive they are. And I'm going over the full half page that the county had, and I think it was Sunday's paper, explaining what the tax differential is and that sort of thing. I got a number of calls, and people aren't happy with the differential. And I said, welcome to the club. We haven't been in years. Overall, we're getting, taxed at something in the neighborhood of $1.20 per hundred. And I think that's taxed at a very high rate compared to the services that we deliver. As good as those services are, we need to, snip, snip, snip. And I don't think this particular budget can be helped that way. I think we need to start over again. And I don't think that this is an appropriate tax amount.
Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Alderman Payon, what services would your residents like to see cut? If we're going to cut snip, 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 what services would they like to snip?
I don't think that they would want to snip any services, but they would probably like to combine with a number of departments, the county departments, including recreation and parks and part of the police department, both of which are projected to save a little bit of money. They don't mind paying more than the county does, but we're paying 25 or 30% more than the county, about 25% actually more than the county. Our services are better. Are they that much better? It's a matter of opinion. I think they are, or I wouldn't live here. But I think they're too high. I think we need to cut the budget.
So would the assumption be that the county could take over our, you said Recs and Parks and part of our police department without any additional, revenue to support those departments?
Oh, I think that there would be additional revenue, but that revenue would be divided by 580,000, not 40,000.
So we would lose our autonomy. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Well, the autonomy has always been the big question, and with my constituents, they also from time to time raise concerns about how much taxes they're paying. When I point out to them that simply moving the service from the city to the county just takes tax dollars out of a different pocket, it takes it out of your county tax pocket rather than your city pocket. And they point out, well, but there's economies of scale because you're spreading those costs over 650,000 people, and the administrative cost alone would be huge. The dollar savings because we would eliminate, although even there I've had some discussions saying, well, if the county is picking up our policing, for example, certainly they're going to want to pick up our police. Presumably, they're picking up our police at what we're paying them, which actually I think is slightly less than what county pays for the average officer because they're competing against us. But they're also going to have to pick up some administrative staff to administer those additional officers. Now, I think that it's couldn't argue, but there are economies of scale across all of our departments. We're spreading administrative costs over 40,000 people as opposed to over 650,000 or whatever that may be. But I wonder how big those savings are. And the discussion definitely falls down when you start saying, so-and-so, do you want to have control over where we direct our policing? Or do you want to have response times that are twice as fast for ambulance in the city as in the county? And I'll even get a little pushback there saying, well, yeah, the city's only 7.5 square miles. It should be faster. But the bottom line question is, do you want 4 minutes or 8-minute wait to get, on average, to get your ambulance service? So, Fred, I hear your points, and I hear it from my constituents too. I guess we could go one of two ways, and I do want to afford you your right and ability to talk about this. This could be either a minority report in our Finance Committee report, or it can just be something that you can raise on the floor of the council, as you pretty much do every year, I would note. As we told Dewan yesterday that some of the things that he wanted to talk about.
I don't do it 104 times though.
No, that's true. But I mean, your point that you're making is a valid point. It represents a view of, I don't know how many. I'm not sure it's a majority. I am sure that if you ask people, do you want this service? You ask constituents, they're going to say, oh yeah, by all means. And if you ask them, how much do you want to pay for that? The question is, do I have to pay for it? Is it extra? Let me think about that. So this is the perpetual conundrum, I think, of all governing bodies. We have no money of our own. We generate no money of our own, or very little. In the enterprise fund, you could argue those services generate money, but so all of the money we get is coming from our constituents, or in one way or another, either through city taxes, county taxes, state taxes, or federal taxes. It's coming from the people. We have no money of our own. But it is, as the points that I think Sheila was raising speak to the fact that every time I ask in a town hall meeting, what do you want to not get? There's a cacophony, and I have to admit, a confusing cacophony for me. I have a strong group of people that are absolutely dedicated to the Pip Moyer Rec Center and all the facilities there, and any notion of going after that. I have a strong phalanx of people that are very interested in public safety and think we don't have enough police rather than too much. Anyway, I offer you either, before we take a vote on this, a section of a minority report in the Finance Committee report to the council, or obviously you obviously have the right to raise it on the floor of the council.
Okay, I would prefer to raise it on the floor of the council.
Okay.
One less thing, edit, yes.
But I'll be sure to wait till at least 2:00 before I do
it. Thank you. And you're gonna invite Julie Stankovic in to assist you in your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, for nostalgia, that's important at 2:00 in the morning.
Okay.
I think it's a lot. To some extent, it's some of the haves and have-nots. I mean, most people can't afford to buy their first house in wards 1, 2, or 8. And there's a problem all over the city, by the way. The real estate is expensive, but that's only part of it. The taxes are part of the monthly payments, and they're a substantial part. And, I'm looking at people, your son's age, my daughter's age, and it's difficult for them to buy property in Annapolis. My daughter really liked the house in West Annapolis, and guess what? It was almost $900,000, and she got pretty much the same thing for $600,000 Arnold, and the tax rate in the county is way less than it is here. I mean, Baltimore City, I have to say, the property taxes are a nightmare there, but here, I don't think there's any reason for it. We can, through this budget, I understand the instructions of our city manager to department heads, and apparently they all followed them. But I think there's enough fat in this budget that it's not going to do much good to trim here and there. I think the budget needs to go back to the drawing board, but that's my humble opinion.
Okay. For the record, my son lives in a house that's twice as expensive as mine. And he calls it wealth. With no further ado, I call for the vote. All those in favor of supporting Section 26 of Ordinance 01620 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. We got that hint. All right. We have forestalled as long as we can. I think we now, by the way, there is also a section 29 of this ordinance, which is basically saying when this is established and ordained, we can go through the formality of recommending that we approve that as well. And Takia is frantically waving her hand.
I was just letting you know Carrie is on. She's just on audio only.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Well, then we can go to that. But is there a motion to recommend favorably Section 29 of the ordinance?
Oh, Mr. Chair, we're going to just skip all over? I mean, I thought we were on 25.
No, well, we're going to go back to 25. But I didn't know we had carry on. Yeah, we can go back. We can go back to 25. But yeah, the answer is we're skipping all over.
I'm going to keep us organized in spite of
All right, so
25.
So I assume that Carrie can hear us. Carrie, the committee was asking questions in Ordinance 01620 about Section 25, Section 27, and Section 28, which we had some questions. So taking 25 first, I'm assuming you can hear us, Carrie. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have no idea why my camera's not working, but you guys are being spared of my face today.
Okay, well, 25 talks about that the city council hereby approves and accepts acceptance of gifts, grants, and contributions to support appropriations and ordinances and funding. I'm trying to remember what the I think the question I wrote in the margin is, what is the role of the finance committee with regard to this? Normally, grants and those things come to the finance committee to be recognized and added to appropriations. I suspect, Carrie, that this is boilerplate language of long standing, but we were feeling left out.
So what exactly is your question here, that you're not sure that you should be weighing in on Section 25?
No, it's that we think that Section 25 should include a reference to the finance committee because we're part of the regular process. Both, in fact, we just voted on a grant application to go out, but also we approve grant monies that are over and above the amounts appropriated before they go to the council. And so does this by implication take the finance committee out of that traditional role?
Can I? Okay. I think that previous grant that you gave approval of, that's an exception. The council no longer has to formally approve, or the finance committee no longer has to formally approve when we apply for a grant. And if we do get it now, if we do get a grant, you have to approve the spending of it. But I don't think that, and Carrie, go ahead, because I think that role has changed in the last couple of years.
Well, I agree with Jody in that, I don't know that, well, first of all, I don't know that by not specifically mentioning the finance committee in section 25, it leaves the finance committee out in consideration of grants, but my understanding has always been, and keep in mind, I did not work on this budget, so I'm sort of at a disadvantage in that regard, but I don't know that the city council has a say in the actual award of the grant. It's just how the grant money is spent, just sort of exactly like Jody said.
Yeah, but that's exactly what this says. Acceptance of gifts, grants, contributions to support appropriations in this ordinance as shown in the funding sources in the capital budget.
Correct. It is giving the council, it's giving the administration the ability to accept gifts and apply for grants and accept grants.
And by that, it's assuming that when we use the term city council, we're talking about the city council and its processes, which includes a finance committee, which is involved.
Correct.
Okay.
This is allowing the administration to go out and get grants and without having to come to the council every time we go out to get a grant.
Sheila?
First of all, I think, and Ross, you just mentioned this, that the finance committee is consumed within the city council. So we are the city council's representatives. So I think we are covered in that second line. But we used to have a process where if city staff wanted to go and pursue a grant, they had to come back to the finance committee first to say they were going to pursue this grant. It appears that we've taken that step out, and now our only responsibility is in appropriation of the grant once it's been awarded.
I would remind you that just 2 days ago, or whenever it was, Director Gordon came to us with an application for a big grant that they wanted our review of, I won't say blessing, but our review of before they went out with it. So you're absolutely right. It used to be, and it was, to be honest, a cumbersome process. I mean, look at the hundreds and hundreds of grants we have every year. Look at how things get slowed down if they have to stop at the finance committee before they even go out to ask. And they have no guarantee they're going to get it. So we could be saying yes to something that they ultimately don't get. So it slows down the timeliness of it. Frankly, I appreciate Director Gordon coming to us as he did, but I was kind of surprised. We always want to be alerted if there's a match. That was the big trigger. If there's a match, they need to tell us that they're committing us to a grant for a match, because we had situations, and it happened to have been in transportation before many of the people on this conference were even in the city, where someone got a grant, got a commitment from the grantee, and there was a big match and no one knew about it, and we had to scramble to find that matching money. So that policy was put in place. If you're doing a grant that requires a match, and usually we say a match that is something other than in kind. Quite often the grant matches are staff hours, staff time, staff dollars. But if it's something where there's a big chunk of money, the tradition has been, but I'm not sure the code covers that, where there's a match required of dollars that are real dollars, not in kind dollars, the finance committee should review it before they go out. And it was only the finance committee. It didn't then have to go to the council for a vote. So it was trying to expedite that, but it was in those cases only. And if we're thinking that that role is still protected in this section, that's fine. I just have a note. Where's the finance committee role in my margin? I don't even remember exactly what we were talking about here. But
Well,
I guess if Carrie would tell us the finance committee processes are subsumed in the word city council, I'm good.
so that was what I was going to ask. Carrie, does our process stay intact with this language?
What process is that?
The process where we are
Finance committee process.
informed of grant, of the pursuit of grants in advance of applications. And I know it's cumbersome. I know that folks don't want to do it, but I think we have a right to know in advance. And maybe it should be a certain dollar amount. Maybe it should be only those grants that require some form of a match. But I think we should know what dollars are coming into the city. I think the residents have a right to know that. And in advance of the awarding of them. So my question to Carrie is, if that process is consumed within section 25 of this legislation.
So to clarify, you're talking about any grant amount, not anything that's in excess of what's budgeted, right?
No, we're talking about any grant.
Okay. I think it's sort of, it can go either way because, and I'd have to check the code again, but I don't think the code gives the council, which would include the finance committee, the approval authority for grant applications. It's just the appropriation authority. So you kind of would be towing a little bit of a line, but you would probably have to make a code change if the finance committee wants to be able to approve grant applications that come in before they're awarded.
Line 28 says that it authorizes the filing of grant applications, including all understandings and assurances contained therein. So to me, that means the filing of grants. That's what you do prior to being awarded a grant. So it looks like we are covered in that language.
Now, that's a separate clause, and it's a clause that authorizes the mayor or the mayor's designee to do this, not the council. That's the mayor acting as the chief executive officer, I believe.
Well, that's the next section after the semicolon.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were referring to.
I was referring to lines 27 and 28.
Oh, okay.
It's my understanding that, and then Carrie, I want you to chime in here. It's my understanding that that section is providing the mayor and the mayor's designees, allowing them to apply for and accept grants on behalf of the city in accordance with the capital budget and the CIP, and that we have the authority to apply for and file grant applications. That's what I believe that entire section is doing. It's giving the mayor and the mayor's designee the authority to go out and apply for grants.
And that's how I read it as well. But keep in mind, I wasn't involved in drafting of this language, but that's how I interpret that section. And
the administration would go out and apply for the grants, but in order to, if we get the award, in order to use it, you would have to approve the use of it. Mm-hmm. The grants that are listed in this budget, you are approving those appropriations, so we can go out and apply for those grants. But if there's something new, the idea is that we come to you for appropriation authority for new grants, not for the authority to apply for grants. I think it was it would have been a step to streamline the process, because I can tell you, if we have to come to the finance committee or the council for grants every time we apply, we're probably going to lose a few.
Well, I think we
Because
probably
of the
lose.
timeframes involved.
I think we would lose many, and I think that's why this has been, I think, more of a tradition and a courtesy over time. We did have that unfortunate experience many years ago under a different regime, probably 2 different regimes ago, we wanted to protect that a staff member, I think with proper zeal, went out to get a grant. The director of the department at the time didn't even know about this grant, and certainly didn't know that the grant came with a dollar match, a dollar, not in kind, but a dollar match. I'll get to you in a second, Ellie. And so the rule became, if there was a match, that would be flown by the finance committee, just so we'd know. Then so many of them are really not real dollar matches. They're in-kind matches, usually staff time, that we were saying, well, this is really a waste of everybody's time. So we really want to see only things where there are real dollars. And that's kind of been the courtesy practice. I think Carrie's right. It's probably not in the code. It might not even be in our financial policies, Jody, which is something we probably need to go back and look at. My sense is, I'll get you in one second, Ellie. My sense is
fine.
That, I don't know that, I think that this would be one where I would be inclined to, in the report to the council, note that we had some questions here, maybe a brief description of what those questions were, and they can do with it what they want. I doubt many on the council are going to get into the number of angels on the head of the pin like we do in finance committee, but we'll see. But I think it's worth noting, and I think when we get to 27, I do need to understand that. So I think my recommendation at this point would be that we note in our report that we had some questions about this, and we can even say we had questions about it and therefore couldn't take a vote to recommend approval of this section to the council, which is pretty much where I find myself.
I'm good with that, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Me too.
All right. So to Ellie, let's let Ellie.
No, as you're discussing this, I was trying to reconcile with the code and the code 6.16.060 does state that there shall be a committee convened to review and evaluate applications submitted to the city, for operating and capital grant. The committee shall consist of the mayor's designated staff person, the finance director's designated staff person, and 2 at-large staff persons. And then it continues to go through the process. So I don't know how this paragraph in section 25.
Is that grants coming in or grants going out?
For the purposes, doesn't really say. It says priorities for making operating and or capital grants to nonprofit organizations under the City of Annapolis Community Grant Program. And then it continues on to nonprofit organizations.
I think you're talking about us giving grants out. It's the way you worded it, that sounded like grants going out of here, not grants coming in. I wanted to add, if I could just add a thought, Alderman Arnett, you were talking about Director Gordon coming to you for that transportation money. There are a few grants that require the governing board's approval of the application before it's made. And I would guess that that's one of them that has to come before you for approval beforehand. So that may be why he brought that to us.
Right. That's good information. I think really what this points to is over time, we've kind of morphed from practice to practice to practice. Over time, over administrations, over different personnel and positions. And I think that my sense of this section is that I think it's likely the council will vote to accept 01620. I would like the committee to just note that we had some questions about this, and we think that post-budget, we need to review our grant processes. I think, Jody, you have processes in the finance department, processes for how you handle things. I haven't looked at those in forever. And it may well elaborate all of this stuff, and it's all taken care of in those processes.
And you had some concern about matches, and before any application goes out, it circulates among the departments, including mine. And
Right.
that's one of the things we check for. Is there a match, and where are you getting it from? How are
Right.
you paying for the match? Just
And
to
those
allay the
were-
concern.
There was a time when those would also fly by the finance committee for an initial on the line. We've gotten away from that. It hasn't hurt my feelings at all that we have, but I think that there still is something that we need to clarify. Fred, is your hand up or your knuckles hurt?
My knuckles hurt.
I see. Director Gerald, you have been wisely mute. Do you have anything
I'm
to?
not dragging them on the ground. Come on, guys. Step up for me.
Fred's punching the walls again.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I'm having some shot tomorrow from the hand doctor. Trigger.
I don't have anything to add. I remember the good old days when we brought all of the grant applications before they were sent out to the finance committee. And that was definitely somewhat of an administrative burden. They never, I don't remember them ever getting disapproved, and it certainly made you all aware of what was going on, but I'm not sure how much that was a value add in the whole process.
I think that there was value added just as an informative courtesy. It allowed the finance committee to see how hard the staff were working to find these monies, but not a value added in terms of adding a length of time, sometimes non-trivial length of time, when the finance committee, at that time, finance committee was only meeting once a month. So these would all stack up and you would wait for the finance committee to get around to it, and they might not get it on that agenda and so forth. So, and I think that it does run the real risk, as Jody has said, that we could lose some grants. I'm not a big fan of grants personally. I think it allows us to overspend our means, but it is the process we have, and it is 6.3 or 6 million, whatever the number is, dollars. And I just think that my motion would be that the finance committee note that we had some questions about the meaning of this and the general process, how it exists now. And then we can decide with that motion, whoever makes it, do we move to not recommend this section to the council, or we recommend it with a recommendation that we follow up after the budget's struck? Sheila.
First of all, Takia, is there a motion on the floor?
No.
No, okay. Then I will make the motion that we not take an action on section 25. I would prefer we not take an action in opposition to it. I would prefer that we not take any action at all, and do make a notation that the Finance Committee has concerns about the role, one, of the Finance Committee, and two, of, I guess it's authority for acknowledging receipt or grants. So I guess my motion is that we take no action on section 25.
Is there a second?
Okay, I'll second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to not recommend on this section to the council and note our concerns signify by saying aye.
Before
Aye.
you take a vote, you just said to not recommend, and Alderwoman Finlayson said she didn't want to not recommend it. She wanted to have no action taken. So that's two different things.
It was my
We have
motion.
to-
Right, but what Alderman Arnett just said was different from what you wanted your motion to be.
Right.
I mean, we have to say something about section 25.
It can be just like
Say
yesterday.
something by saying that we're not supporting.
You're not
or-
taking action.
No, that's, my motion is that we not take an action on section 25 and that there be a notation to list the issues of concerns that we had.
A notation in our report to the council.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Don't add
so
anything.
how do
That's
you're saying we don't vote? We're not voting on that? It is, it's a motion.
Just don't take any action, that's all.
The motion
One way or
is,
the other.
the motion on the floor is
To take
that
no
we
action.
vote to not take an action on section 25.
And note our concerns.
Right, I don't repeat that over and over.
All right.
But yeah,
All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. All right, the next one is interesting. Section 27. Be ordained the city of Annapolis, there shall be a deputy director of finance of Annapolis to collect sums set apart for several funds to keep separate receipts, amounts, and so forth. Do we have a deputy director of finance?
Where does it say deputy director?
Oh, duty. I misread duty of the, okay. I'm sorry.
Good, here comes my deputy director, I'm glad it's in there.
Well, I mean, that's what I was thinking, Jody, was your
I
discussion
snuck
about.
it in there. I snuck in a separate section with my deputy director just to try to get it by you.
Sheila,
All right.
no, it's too early for a martini.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the need though. It's not 11 o'clock yet. I mean, this is brutal. Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion that we approve section 25, which outlines the duties of the finance director.
How about 27?
27, I'm sorry. 27.
Is there a second?
Second.
It says, as required by several acts and ordinances. Okay, is there any discussion?
Nah, this looks like an easy one to me.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. All right, all those in favor of recommending section 27 signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. All right. And section 28.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve section 28, which outlines the tax levy.
However, there was a question of the date. Is it October 1st, 2020 or 2021? That was a question. Anybody?
No, I'm reading it and the print's
I'm
kind
sorry.
of.
So it's got to be 2020. I thought I had brought that up at one point. Anything that's unpaid in October? No, I think it's 2020.
Yeah.
Because anything that goes past this October 1, 2020, that unless you want to do your half payment in December, with the balance due, shall be overdue, bearing interest. Okay, yeah, I think it's 2020. I think that's a mistake.
So it would be appropriate. Well, Fred, go ahead.
When are taxes due? When are property taxes due?
You have to pay they're due by September 30th for the first payment, and if you're splitting your payments, the second payment is December, I don't know if it's the 1st of December or the last.
I'm sorry, guys. Can we just
the
pause
last
for a
December.
second, please? We lost power, and I don't
Yeah,
think we're broadcasting right now, so.
Oh, okay.
That, We
So
lost
you-
power?
We just lost power for a few seconds and everything went black here in City Hall. So
Yeah.
Saw
we
that.
are, she's probably trying to reboot the,
Computers,
Televised
and we're not
session.
broadcasting right
All right.
now. So if you
So
could
we
give
need
us a
to
second,
stop talking until we get back online. Is that what I'm hearing?
please.
Well, you know what? We didn't lose your pictures though.
right, I know, my computer
Right.
stayed on because it's got a battery backup and I'm using a battery right now and I suppose same thing for her, but the,
Yeah, for the laptop, but not the computer,
The
and
cable
broadcasting has stopped
Yeah,
across
yeah.
the street.
Okay.
and our parking garage is also not working today, so we're.
Yeah,
we're
when
all
we
parking
came
on the
in,
streets.
it was apparent we had a power
You
outage.
can't get out of the garage?
You couldn't get
The
in.
Electricity.
The electricity is
Not
out.
working.
Too many people talking at once. What were you saying, Takia?
The electricity is out in the garage. You couldn't get in.
So I thought we have this gigantic diesel generator sitting right there between the garage and the city hall. Isn't it doing its job?
It doesn't work for Hillman Garage. It just supplies power to City Hall, and City Hall still has it. It sounds like it failed, and then it took a second to get online
Yeah.
to start
We're
providing
good.
power.
Me? Yeah, I'm back up. Okay, so we're back up, you guys.
We're back up. All right. So on section 28, it seems
I
that
hope
the
all my
finance
notes are
committee
still there.
could recommend a technical amendment to change line 3 from 2021 to 2020.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to amend section 28 to change the date to October 1st, 2020.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And then section 29.
Should we make the motion to approve section 28 as amended?
Yes, but what was the date again?
So- What was your question?
What was the date again?
October 1st, 2020.
So
Thank you.
changing 2021 to 2020. All right,
Okay.
is there a motion to recommend approval of section 28 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes
Aye.
have it. Section 29.
Fred,
Which
did
is
you vote in
simply-
favor of that? Was that a unanimous vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making my notes.
Section
I know
29.
my voice is so quiet that nobody ever hears it.
I don't have a violin, I'm sorry.
Section 29 is just the date of the enactment. This ordinance, all of this takes effect on the 1st of July. Is there a motion to recommend approval of that?
Mr. Chair, I will recommend approval of section 29, which outlines the date in which this is effective. Can I get a second?
Fred, no second from you?
No second.
I'll second that motion. Is there discussion? Does anyone want to change it to July 2nd? Would that be better?
Don't start something you can't stop or end in 30 minutes.
Hearing no discussion, all in favor of recommending to the council approval of the enactment date signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure I fall on my sword on that one, but what the heck. All right, so now we've pushed it off for as long as we can. I believe we're now ready to return to section 1, which includes the entirety of the appropriation amount and includes Appendix A attached to this and includes the recommendations from the administration regarding, God, where did all that go? Regarding the supplements of revenues, or no, that's in C. Recommendations on reductions in appropriations as made by the city manager and is on a sheet called Summary of Proposed Reductions to the General Fund. And I think the item that we have spent most time focusing on has been the deferring of the COLAs for all city employments to January 1st. The information.
Ross, I don't know where you are. My section 1 doesn't read anything like that. Where am I?
Section 1 is the approval of the entirety of the appropriation amount for the general fund, 86,267,400. It also includes, by reference, Appendix A. And Appendix A goes through department by department with their specific appropriations for salaries, benefits, and other, in most cases, some departments have some more detail to it. Embodied in those are the appropriations as reduced by the recommendations from the administration that do the proposed reductions to the general fund. That is a one-page sheet. There's also another sheet that I think we got from Jody, which I can't put my hands on. I have the one that came from City Manager Gerald. It is characterized by a column of numbers, one of which is highlighted in yellow, $310,000, which is remove the funding for 2 school resource officers. I don't know who highlighted the yellow. It goes all the way down at the bottom. It talks about total reductions of $3,774,397 and recurring general fund expenditures in excess of recurring revenue shortfall of $105,500. In this, I believe, is at least one item of debate for the committee, and that is the $668,000 for bumping the COLA payments from July back to January. And there's detail that elaborates how much that is for each of the 4 unions, and then how much for the non-represented and management employees. Is there something else that I'm missing that Sheila?
My question is, if we take anything out of this list, then we've got to find the revenue to replace it.
You got it.
Okay, so one of my concerns, and first of all and foremost, it's the COLA, and I'm not going to support that reduction of $689,000. We have some other items here, such as the OPEB, which is a small amount, $25,000. I mean, it is, but it isn't. And the 2% personnel turnover allowance by department. And I'm not as uncomfortable with that, but it's the next one, the employee benefits, the $365,700. I would agree to that reduction if there is some notation about how it's going to be restored. Same thing with OPEB funding. Same thing with contributions to 401ks that I believe have been negotiated with individuals, if not with the union. We have worked very hard to get us in a good place with our employees, current and retired. If we have to cut in those positions, in those areas, we need to determine how we're going to fix the problem we are exacerbating by taking money out of these areas. So, I understand it's difficult times and we've got to make some hard decisions, but we've got to plan forward and say how we're going to fix this problem, because we're leaving a hole someplace. And that hole, like I said, we've tried hard to fill those gaps, OPEB funding and that kind of thing. And so now we're taking ourselves backwards. I don't want us to go backwards. We may have to take a step backwards, but I want to outline how we're going to continue to move forward.
So
And one more thing, because my question, and maybe it was given to me, what the savings would be, and I asked this question yesterday, maybe you sent it to us. If we freeze all vacancies right now, July 1, what is our savings across all departments?
all roads lead to Fred's legislation.
And I didn't get an answer.
Yeah. So I think Jody's trying to get a word in edgewise.
Okay, so just so I don't lose track of this response, the 365 for the January 1 change is a change in the way we are restructuring health insurance benefits for age 65 and older employees and retirees. For details, we'd have to get Tricia on here, but it is going to be a better plan, better options for those people, and it is going to save us that amount of money so that we don't have to send that amount of money over to the health insurance fund to pay health insurance premiums. It's not something that will impact future years in any way. We're hoping that this change will continue into future years. It is a cost-saving measure in the way we structure our benefits.
And this is something that we would do whether we were having a revenue shortfall or not. If we would have continued through the year and not had the whole COVID crisis that we have today, we would still be proposing this change because it's better for the employees and retirees over 65, and it's better for the city. So it's like our prescription plan. We're moving ahead with that, and that's going to save us money, irrespective of the current COVID crisis. This is the same type of situation. It's an improvement for both sides.
Well, have the unions been at the table with this discussion? We got into trouble a few years ago with the retirees not being made aware of decisions the city was making. And I have negotiated many a contract. And I understand what it means when you say it's going to benefit our employees. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, but they have to have a voice in this. So I would hope that whatever, and I'm not saying these recommendations are bad or ill-conceived or won't benefit the employees in the city. They just need to be at the table. And I see Trish is on now. They need to be aware. That's something that this is not.
Where are these cuts listed? I don't care. They're not in Appendix A. Where?
Okay, Trish, can you tell us about this?
No, wait a minute. Wait, we need to get Fred up to speed. Fred, there is a paper that we were given weeks ago from the city manager that was sent to all council members early in April.
Okay, I just didn't know what you were making reference to. Right. I've got a book here, my budget book. I've got the legislation. I don't see it with either of those.
It did not come with the budget binder. It was something that was prior to I believe it was prior to the mayor releasing his budget. I think it was like on April 7th or. Right.
It was before we started the negotiations with the unions. We wanted you all to be aware that we were reopening the discussions, so we provide the information.
So the city manager has learned a lesson. He'll never give us that kind of courtesy again.
Takia, can you send it to Fred?
I mean, I got all kinds of papers here, but it's April 7th.
When did we get it?
April 7th? I'm looking. Possible topics, that's 27th. I think it was around April 7th, or it was certainly before the. Come on.
Unfortunately, because of your power failure, I've been dropped off of my remote access here. I would look that up for you. But we emailed it to you just before we met with the bargaining units. And I want to say it was like late March.
Who did it come from?
I think it was like the first.
It came from David, I believe, right, David? You're
Yes.
on mute, David.
It did come from David.
Yeah.
Trying to find it.
I have it. Should I email it to someone?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
email it to Fred.
It was April 6th, and David sent it out to all council members. I just want to make sure it was his sort of executive summary of the budget, and then he attached the general fund reductions, right? That's it? Okay. I'll send it to Kia.
Thank you, Ellie, because I don't think I have that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you and Fred
I don't see.
and Ross. Michelle. And then it's
I have it, but I can't find the email. But if you've got
Yeah,
it,
I got it.
get it to Fred. That would be helpful to the
Can't even
world.
find it on April 6th.
It's also, the list is reiterated in the PowerPoint demonstration on page
Yes.
12.
Well, that I
Okay, well, that's a good place to look for it as well.
Just let me know at what point you'd like me to answer
Yeah, we're trying to get
questions that were half posed.
Fred on the same page.
Okay.
I mean, that's something I haven't looked at in 3 or 4 weeks. I don't.
Well, we're asking that we look at it now because I think for myself, this is the locus of any concerns I have for section 1 are these items in the recommended reductions. It's called reductions to the
Got
general
it.
fund. It's really reductions in increase in spending, right? I mean, it's not, is it absolute? Well, I guess some of them are, like supplies are lower in 21 than they would be for some department in 20. So some of them are absolute reductions, but things like this savings from the plan are a savings that since we're going to do this, we can recognize and won't be charged against our appropriations.
I got it.
Okay.
Belly.
So, all right. So
So may I ask my question of Trish?
please.
Where I so rudely interrupted you. Sorry.
That's okay. We're all straight now. Trish, I was questioning the change in the plan for retirees. And I referenced back to a time not so long ago when we got into trouble because we made some changes without including them at the table.
Oh, we have been discussing, and the union has been asking, then a couple of unions obviously have been asking for a true Medicare wrap. And by that, that meant no co-pays, no out-of-pocket expenses, so that those that had Medicare or Medicare eligible had a plan that took care of all of those other expenses. And our current offering does not do that. And so we went and on their behalf, went investigating ways to accomplish that with, we put our insurance brokers out there to find something. We've been in process with this for years. And we found one. We found a good one that gives higher benefits and does exactly that, so the out-of-pocket expenses are removed. And I have had these conversations with the bargaining unit members, leadership as well. So they're well aware of what this does. The other biggest piece of this that ends up being the financial savings is that by pulling the 65 and older into this plan, it helps us actually secure reinsurance. We have a rising number of retirees. We've come dangerously close to not having a reinsurance option available to us because they simply won't take on the liability of an ever increasing retiree population. And so this allows us to do that and also affect some savings related to that. It does not really change what's going on with those that are in OPEB that aren't yet 65. They're still in the plan. We haven't done anything to them. We have not lost a benefit available to them. So this is really trying to carve out the 65 and older in order to accomplish what they have asked for over time, which is a plan that's a true wrap. I'm just going to reiterate it so it's just understood, and that's that by having the ability to maintain the reinsurance, it then allows us some separation between retiree and active, because as you know, as you would expect, your retiree population may have a higher usage or a higher need for medical interventions that therefore affect the experience rating of the whole plan. So I think we've done that very mindfully, very respectfully, and not without interaction with the unions and their knowledge about it. And we've had this discussion of late because there was also a desire, when we changed the formula for how you pay for your retiree health insurance to 2.5 per year of service. People that are injured on the job and end up retiring from a job-related disability, there's a great concern about them, suffering an accident with the city, young enough in their career, such that their insurance is, monumentally large. So we have even we've even talked about all of the retiree benefits when we have considered a side letter on providing that insurance premium to be stayed at 70% contribution by the city for those that are injured on the job and retire as a result of a job-related disability. So I feel like we've done a really, really good job of that, Sheila. I hope that that sounds like that in my response.
Well, it sounds good. I guess my question is are the retirees in the active union, Mr. Hall, for example? I know he represents the retirees.
Yeah, they're not union members, but they do, in their collective bargaining agreement, address retiree benefits.
Okay.
Knowing that as a future desire to have an influence over it, as an active member, they do that. We've made some other changes which are good, and that will be reflected in our plan document. That has to do with qualifying. And lifestyle changes, that kind of thing. So I think we're being very progressive and inclusive in that way, and less restricted.
Okay, so we can support foregoing the benefit of the change in the plan, this $365,000.
From a savings perspective, I think that Jody's done an excellent job of looking at that. Now we have that health insurance fund, and the way that Jody has looked at the accounting of that and handled that, I feel confident about it. I hope that you will as well.
Well, I guess I don't. I want to go back to Sheila's point that a few years ago, we made a change to retirees. I think it was something to do with 2% as opposed to something else. And we got sued again. So I guess, is this something, this and the other OPEB, the 25,000, is this something that is in a bargaining agreement somewhere?
That suit was about retiree compensation through the plan document.
Right.
That was not about health insurance.
Okay, are we frozen?
What?
I hear you, but I don't. There you are.
My question is, do we have the right, the administration have the right to make this change to the health insurance plan for the $367,700 and this change for OPEB going from 50 to 25.
Technicalities.
Oh,
What?
Sheila's freezing.
She's freezing.
Turn the heat up.
Put a coat on. Turn on the heat.
Sheila?
I could not hear what you just said.
Okay, I'll say it again. My question is quite simple, and I thought it was the one you asked. Do we unilaterally have the authority to make this $367,700 change and the $25,000 change in the OPEB?
We do not have the ability to forego the COLA, if that's one of your questions.
No. This is these two OPEB amounts, the $367,700
Oh, okay.
and $25,000. Jody?
Well, Trish just said it's in the negotiated agreement. And if it is, then we do not have the ability to unilaterally change. That was the question, whether they had been part of the discussion.
No, let me just make myself clear. We make sure that we have conversations when we're making, considering options in retiree health. They do not have influence over anything other than what is in their bargaining unit agreement. Like they can't say, oh, you got to choose Humana over something else. You know, they can't, that's not really the point. We are providing the benefit and we provide the benefit accordingly. We have to make changes to the bargaining unit agreement when they are different from what we want to provide as the benefit. And so that to that extent, we are absolutely expected to negotiate. We have language that we have agreed needs to be cleaned up because it's more restrictive in the bargaining unit agreement than the benefit that we are going to provide them. But as I said, we're changing some criteria in terms of lifestyle changes. So we want to make sure that that's accounted for in the bargaining unit agreement. But to the extent that the city is responsible for providing retiree health as in concert with the bargaining unit expectation, we can do that, but they can't influence us in terms of what that benefit. They can't say, you know, there'll be no copays, they can't do that. We have to see what's in the market. We have to figure out within the market what we can afford and what benefits that market offering has to give us. And to the extent it disagrees with or is not compatible with what's in the bargaining unit, absolutely. But communication is a whole nother matter. That's just basic human relations, labor relations work that is what we should do. And I like to think we do. That matters in terms of making sure people are aware of that. Now, I can't reach every bargaining unit member, so I'm going to talk to the leadership.
I guess my concern, and I think the one that Ross is raising also, is the representation of the retirees. And you indicated that the current bargaining units are inclusive of their retirees. So
it is inclusive of the retiree benefit, not that the retirees are members of the union.
So my view is quite simply, I don't think we can count the 689 until we have a negotiated agreement. And so to me, that's not a reduction. And that means that's money that we have to at least have an alternative to find other savings however we're going to adjust for that. The real question for these two OPEB amounts are those things that we can put in the bank now? We don't have to worry about the unions coming back and saying, no, we don't want the 670.
So the one you're talking about, Alderman Arnett, that is not a part of the ongoing contributions to OPEB for current employees. That is the amount that the city is setting aside to try to address the unfunded liability for past service costs. We have committed to the rating agencies to increase the amount that we are setting aside in the OPEB trust to address our past service costs. And
You're talking about the 25,000 now?
Yes. So to go to that second one you are referring to, that's not anything, I don't think it's in the union agreements. Tricia can say that, but we are supposed to address the past service liability for OPEB. We've committed to the rating agencies to increase that. Our policy is we're going to increase it every year until we can finally address that past service cost. We have been increasing it by amount of 50,000 a year, starting in FY19, then added 50 in 20. We were going to add 50 in 21, but we have decreased that increase to 25. So that we can contribute what we want to that purpose. But we have committed to do it as a matter of policy, and the rating agencies continually bring up the fact that we've got to start setting aside money for the past liability. It doesn't impact current employees, how much we're setting aside for those that are in the OPEB plan now. We're continuing to contribute during the payroll cycle for them as well. But this is just that extra piece that tries to whittle away the unfunded liability.
Jody, can you tell us the percentage? Isn't that a percentage each increase?
No, we started with, this was going to be, I think we started with 300, then we made it 350. We're going to, I'll have to go, I'm not sure I got the right numbers. In 19 was the first time we did it. We set the 19 budget. Might have been 350. Then we increased it to 400 this year. I shouldn't be talking off the top of my head like this. Let me look at it. But in 19, we put one number in, we increased that by 50,000. Now we were going to do 50,000 more this year, but we took out half of that. So,
Mr. Chair,
the rating agencies, and is it 25,000 per employee or 25,000?
No, this is just a blanket amount that we, the city, are setting aside separately. That's why it's in finance non-allocated budget. That we are setting aside separately to try to pay down the past service costs.
Sheila, go ahead.
It's on top of everything we're doing in the payroll cycle for current employees.
Sheila?
I'm still not clear on what that amount represents.
Okay, I'm looking it up for him.
Okay, but I will be comfortable, or I will be accepting of these costs, as I said, or these reductions, if we've made the appropriate contacts to let the people who are impacted know. But I would like to have still some notation as to how we're going to restore these funds. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but we worked very hard to get our post-employee benefits at a level that's acceptable, because we were way behind. We weren't paying into that fund. But anyway, I am comfortable with
Fred, I'm going to get to you, but Sheila, can you clarify, when you say these, I think we have three different amounts on the table right now, the two OPEB amounts, and then the COLA amount. You're only talking about the OPEB amounts when you say you're comfortable with the cuts, as long as we have some way of noting how we're going to go back. First of all, the 367,700, I don't think really is a cut. I think it's a savings that we didn't have going into this. So in many ways, it's not a reduction in spending. It is, but I mean, it's confusing. The 25, because we're doing that to satisfy the rating agencies, I would imagine that we could find $25,000 a whole host of places, rather than mucking around with something we're doing to make rating agencies happy. But let's let Fred get in, because he's been patient.
Well, may I finish my comment though?
All right.
I'm good with 1 through 18
1 through 18.
on the list.
Oh, God, of course, I've lost the list now.
That's on the summary of proposed reductions to general fund.
I don't have numbers.
Yes, you do.
Left column.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not, so, but that's okay. I'm glad to hear you are. But
Okay.
go ahead, Fred.
I can hardly believe that we're having this conversation about OPEB contributions. I mean, I was here and part of the really fiasco that occurred a few years back. Ross, I know that you and Sheila were too. And I mean, reducing what we promised we were going to make to help make up for the 2 or 3 years it was that we didn't make any contributions at all, I think is borderline ridiculous. I mean, let's find the 25,000 someplace else. This is not the place to do it. It's irresponsible. What we did was irresponsible. Well, the council didn't really do it. Well, I guess indirectly we did, but this is not acceptable to me. Certainly not number 8. I'm all for reductions, as you know, and I know you are too, where possible, but not here.
Okay. Well, I agree with you, although I think you've got some mixture of payments to the pension plan versus OPEB, but nevertheless, I'm not going to fall on my sword for this $25,000, but I do think of, number that small, we certainly.
You froze. Oh, there you go.
Applies. Yes. David.
I guess I'm feeling a little bit frustrated right now because what we've tried to do is come up with balanced cuts across the board. So OPEB is still increasing. Next year, it's increasing from FY20. Instead of increasing by 50,000, it's going to increase by 25,000, which results in $25,000 savings. Remember that these are, we've never seen, at least in my lifetime, we've never seen an economy like we have right now. And we're nitpicking over $25,000 of reduced increase. Likewise, so much of our cost is city employees. We're not cutting employees. We're not reducing pay for city employees. All we're doing is deferring a COLA. And that affects me, and that affects every single city employee. So that seems like a reasonable approach when other cities are cutting staff and doing furloughs and doing a lot of other more dramatic things. All we're doing is pushing back a COLA by 6 months. So again, we tried to be fair and reasonable across the board and didn't target any certain group. I can tell you the 401A plan, that $160,000, that's 14 people that are affected by that. So there you go. We can talk more about that in closed session, but that's 14 people for 160,000. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right. So I need to say something. Sheila's on the committee. She had her hand up, but I want to also get Dewan in. But I want to note for the record that when David says that he's moderately frustrated, he really means he's furious. So you've got to get these gradients right. I agree with you. 20 falling on your sword over $25,000, and I don't see falling on anything for this improvement in the package, the 360, the whatever it was for the change in the benefit program. I agree with Trish's explanation. This seems like we've done something positive. I do have a problem with the COLA on 2 counts. 1, I don't see how we can counter it if we don't have the agreement. But 2, I see it as a short-sighted step. It's a kick the can down the road, which when we hit even tougher times next year, which is my prediction / assumption, that option is gone. I mean, they're going to say, wait a minute, you can't keep coming back to the COLA well. Now, I look out in the private sector and I see people not talking about getting COLAs, which are increases, but are talking about seeing real reductions in take-home pay. So I think we do have to have an outside calibration of what's going on in the rest of the world. So in that regard, I do agree with you, David, but I just don't see how we can count it if we don't have it, if it isn't there. Sheila's next and then Dewan.
I don't know where you are in bargaining, but my question would be, and I heard David yesterday morning, was it yesterday morning in the FAC meeting? I've heard Jody say it on more than one occasion. And Ross, of course, you've been predicting this for forever, that it's going to be tougher down the road. Right now, we do have the resources to pay this COLA. My concern is in January, we're going to go back to the unions and say, sorry, we really don't have the resources, the money to pay you now. And we do have a multi-year agreement. So that fulfilling that obligation should be a number one priority. You know, our employees are the ones that keep this city running. They are doing the work. And shouldn't be expected to be the ones to bear the brunt of this problem. And down the road, we're going to be asking them for more, okay, for more givebacks. And so I don't believe that this is the time. And are we reducing their healthcare costs? We're going to tell them that they're not going to get the COLA that was rightfully negotiated, but we're also going to reduce your paychecks because the cost of your healthcare is going up. So, you know, I know the holiday is over. What's the cost to them now? So our employees will take home less of a paycheck starting July 1. And the 2%, number 9 on the list, add 2% personnel turnover allowance to the departments. Is that the vacant positions? Or just general turnover of existing positions?
You got a question for us?
Yes.
So for somebody.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure because you had a long list of things you're going down. So the 2% is an attempt to force departments to hold vacancies open. Rather than freeze positions or cut positions, it forces an amount in, reduces their budget so they have to hold vacancies for a certain amount of time. When we did the 2%, the calculation actually shows 2% of everything but fire, because fire can't have turnover because they have to fill their slots with overtime. So I calculated 2% of everything but fire, and then I spread it to departments based on how I see their vacancies. We typically have one we carry here and there. Police has several they carry during the year. There are other departments, Public Works holds vacancies here and there. They'll fill one, they'll get another one, they'll fill one. So we put that turnover in those departments where they have the vacancies. So you will see, and yes, that is an attempt to force them to hold positions vacant so they don't overspend their budget. And that's what the city manager has been advocating, is that we would like to manage it that way rather than cutting positions or freezing positions, determine how much turnover we need to put in the budgets to get to where we need to be.
So
yeah,
for
if I could just add to that, just one quick comment. So a couple of things. One is that, we don't want to put the savings on the city employees. We don't. I would rather do anything, but remember that 70% of the budget is salaries. So if we're going to have meaningful cuts, you got to look at that piece. You got to look at that 70% piece. And so when we looked at that, I guess the most equitable, the least painful part was to defer the COLA. So when we opened bargaining with the unions, we not only talked about deferral of COLA for FY21, but also for FY22, because we have exactly the same feelings about FY22 that you just expressed, that it's going to be a tough year, especially if the real estate assessments come in low. As far as the 2% personnel turnover, that's what we're going to achieve over the year through managing vacancies. If you feel like we need a bigger number than that, put a bigger number there, and we'll try to manage to that by leaving vacancies open longer. We can do that in fire, we just can't. So fire cannot have a turnover allowance. So we tried to do that in the past, and it's not possible. We end up paying with overhead or with overtime. It's more expensive that way. But if you feel like that number is not big enough, instead of doing a hiring freeze, just add a higher number there so that we can manage to something. Because it's difficult to manage to a hiring freeze. You just can't. And you're hurting the other employees by not allowing their fellow workers who they have to cover for when it's vacant to fill those positions.
Well, 2 days in a row, I've asked for the costs, the savings for freezing all vacant positions. Would that number be inclusive of those savings?
So if you freeze the current vacancies, you're not going to be able to hire a new public works director. You're not going to be able to hire a new chief of comprehensive planning. There's a lot of really important positions that
That's
would
not
be
true.
filled.
Not under my bill legislation.
Well,
It depends on how you structure a hiring freeze. But if we look at today's vacancies, there's 43, I think, and say we're going to leave those open for the entire year, and that's how we're going to achieve the savings. Then there's some positions. I mean, they're all important positions. We wouldn't have those, but there's some that you just have to keep in mind that wouldn't be filled.
Well, you know how I feel about putting more work on already full plates. I'm just trying to get to a point where I can come up with $689,000. And if that means freezing vacancies, and maybe not all 43, but those that we can freeze to make up that difference, that's what I want to support. But I don't have the information to figure out what we can determine as positions we can keep frozen for the year. And therefore, Fred's legislation holds some weight for me because I don't have an alternative. So help me to find what I need in this pot of resource, in this pot of money, these 43 vacancies.
If I could offer that we're trying to do bargaining with the unions. They fully recognize the severity of the problem that we have right now. They understand because they see what other municipalities are going through. So let us work with them. Maybe COLA is not what is best for them. Maybe they'll offer other alternatives, but you always in the past, and I think in this case, they are willing to work with us to find savings. I think that's the better way to deal with this. To take the salary piece off of this when that's 70% of the budget and say we're going to cut other areas or reduce staffing through a higher personnel turnover percentage or hiring freeze, I don't think helps the employees. I really don't.
Well,
so let me interject. I have some things to say about this, but Dewan has been waiting patiently, and Ellie, I'd like to let them in. And then I think we do need to pursue this and hopefully come up with a position for the Finance Committee. So Dewan, please.
Yeah, thanks. Excuse me. So I just, I'm getting in late, but I'm catching up on the conversation in regards to the freezing and pay and all that stuff. So David, did you mention in the beginning that the deferment would also take, it would not just be for employees, it'd be for the directors as well?
Believe it or not, the directors are employees too. So yeah, it's all employees. It's everybody. It's across the board.
Okay. And Sheila, I'm just looking here at the Capital Gazette posted on the 22nd with the salaries. If you look at the first 3 pages, every single last one of them are at least 100 grand and more. I mean, that's just 600,000 right there.
What are you looking at?
The salaries.
No, what
The capital.
It was posted on January, you know, when they release all these. Yeah, it was posted on January the 22nd. I mean, you don't even have to slice it in half. You can just trim a little bit of that, and you'd have at least 300,000. But I don't know.
Well, it's not.
Just don't take it from the people at the bottom. Is my thing.
Yeah, I know, but that number is not a monolithic number. It's composed of people in the bargaining unit and people who are not. So you just can't say we're going to do that. But you are absolutely correct. That is a big sum of money. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the room, not older persons, are in that sum of money. But Ellie, go ahead, and then I do want to talk about this a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. No. Just an editorial here. I think we should respect the effort that was made in these reductions since they were made by the city manager that manages the department. So keep that in mind. But my question is, just to be clear, we can't have Fred's legislation and the 2%. There are two different approaches to address hiring. It's very important to know that. We don't want to compound reductions. So my question is, I'm not really clear on the 2%. Is that just a number, or was that studied, Jody? You explained it, but I still didn't get it. And if there is flexibility, managerial, David, in increasing that, is that the way to go to address the salary issue? Because again, it is 70% of the budget. So what the 2% thing?
So the total, what I did was come up with a total turnover. And what I did was took all regular salaries and I took 2% of that number. And 2% of that number was that total that you see in turnover. And then I allocated that out to departments as I felt they could manage vacancies too. I won't say I didn't put any in fire. There's a small piece in fire because they do have some non-firefighter positions there.
Okay, so you didn't have the value. What Sheila's getting at is it would be helpful to know this value of vacant positions.
I have the list of vacancies. I cleaned it up last night, but what it doesn't have is dollar values associated with each position, which is something that's going to have to be merged with other information. I can give you the list of vacancies. There's no dollars attached to it right now. And you're right, Alderwoman Tierney. This is the same approach to two different approaches to the same issue. We would rather do it with turnover. And if you feel that that's where we need to do it, then the answer would be to increase the amount of turnover in the budgets. And we would have to select which departments could take more turnover or would be able to manage their vacancies to that turnover number. The biggest chunk of turnover gets put in the police budget because they typically hold several positions vacant all year long. And I don't know that they're the same positions. They have one go vacant, they'll fill one will go vacant, but they always have a few of these positions vacant. So that's where we put the biggest chunk of that turnover reduction. And I took a little bit in my budget too, because I typically carry a vacancy for part of the year. There's been times, as you know, I've been down 4 positions. So I don't want to go there again. We can't. But I did put some in my budget, some in DPW, some in planning and zoning, the larger departments that tend to carry vacancies.
So that 2% is that 2% is a weighted average, because I was going to suggest, do we apply a different percentage with the life safety departments versus the other departments? But it sounds like you studied that and developed in this number.
Yeah, it was more of a who carries vacancies on a regular basis. And I would call that my judgment based on my review of who carries vacancies.
Yeah.
Smaller departments that have 4 employees that are filled right now, I didn't allocate anything to them. HR, there's Tricia. We have... She has like 5 or 6 positions, and I did not give her any turnover in her budget because they're all filled right now. DPW, planning and zoning, finance, police, and a little bit in fire. And I don't know if I'm missing anybody, but that's where that turnover went to.
So let me just finish by asking this. City Manager Jarrell, do you have a recommendation on which way to go with this? Would you prefer this versus a hiring freeze legislation so we don't, waste time?
Yeah. I mean, that would be my personal preference because, we had a hiring freeze a few years ago where all the vacancies had to come to the finance committee to be approved before they could be filled. And they were all approved. And so that was limited effectiveness. If we pick a number like we have here that has to be managed to, and we give those numbers to the department directors to manage to those, I think that's a much more effective way to skin the cat. That's my personal feeling.
Would we need legislation to do that?
No, it's built in the budget.
Okay.
You would recommend an amendment to make a reduction to the appropriations, and then we would put it in the departments where we thought could handle more turnover. And what I want to say is the only time you run into difficulty there is if you put more turnover into their budgets than they have vacancies. If nobody quits, and if they have vacancies that total 200,000 and you put 250,000 in there, nobody quits. You're not going to realize you're going to overspend your budget.
Well, thank you.
All right, so.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yep. I'd like to get a word in sometime too, but go ahead, Sheila.
Oh, please.
We're trying to prevent that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead, Sheila. I'm looking for something.
Jody, my question is, we could then increase the personnel turnover allowance to $1 million.
What was that number? That was 570 something, right?
572.8 right now.
Okay.
And I'd like to make it 1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
If we did that, it would cover the cost of everything under 19, the COLA. I'm good with David managing it. I guess the question is, how doable is that? And of the 10 positions that have been vacant in the police department for any number of years, do they get a higher percentage than that 2%?
Yeah.
If you look at the history, I think that department has vacancies a larger number for a longer period of time than anybody else.
There's only one. If you double the number of double the amount of turnover, I can tell you the largest chunk has to go to police. But I think that what you just suggested may do what I had just said, is that you're going to put the turnover in higher than we currently have vacancies for, and then if nobody leaves, you don't have any turnover, and you continue to pay people.
But I heard
remember there was something that somebody very wise told me one time, and that's that personnel equals services. And when you cut personnel, but that's what you're doing by increasing that to 1.3 million. You're cutting the number of employees that we have through the year because we've got to keep vacancies vacant to make up for that amount. So we're really cutting services by doing that. And we're also putting work on the other employees' shoulders that they have to make up for those people in those vacancies.
Well, and also I think it's a very artificial device. I mean, it's ducking the problem. I suspect that the finance committee and probably the council, but certainly this finance committee is not going to be able to get around a particular technicality, which is I don't see how we can count any COLA deferral until we have union agreement to do that. I did perk up when I heard you say, Director Gerald, because I think this is both fair and honest, that we're not talking about just COLA deferral in fiscal 21. We're also talking about it in 22. I think that's what we need to do. I think that is coming and it's honest. I think that's going to make the negotiations harder. But I can say for myself, I cannot recommend approval of this section of the ordinance for the reason that we can't count $689,000 that we haven't negotiated. I don't know when we're going to get those negotiations done, or if we're going to get those negotiations done. If we don't get them done, we're approving a budget that has a $687,000 hole, $89,000 hole in it. And I don't see how the finance committee or the council can do that. So it seems to me like we're in an impasse here, pending negotiations with the union in terms of accepting the appropriations amount of the 86 million, whatever it is. And I don't know that deliberating from now through Monday at 7 o'clock is going to resolve that situation. I just don't see how we can do something, count something as budget that isn't agreed to.
Yeah. And this is just this is a question. Is there a way to structure your comments to be more general as to we have to achieve a number and here's how, because the union discussions aren't going to be finished by the time you have to deliver your report. So your report—
Are they going to be finished by the time we have to vote on the budget?
Yeah, and so we have a goal, and could you make recommendations as how you would like to get to that goal, or your points or your concerns, those kind of things in your report. I don't know where we'll be by the time we strike the budget, but if the answers are if we're not successful there, here's what we recommend we do. Would that be an approach you could take?
Well, I think that's what Sheila was attempting to do, is say, she wasn't saying it this way, I'll paraphrase. If we don't get the 689, we will have to take it out of the vacancies. I take your point that that's taking more. 689 would be taking more than we have vacancies now. I take David's point, 43 vacancies now. Some of them are pretty darn critical, and some of those critical ones are expensive. In terms of Director of Public Works, after Marcia's performance, I think we're in good hands there, and maybe we could deal with that. In terms of the position in planning and zoning, we got a comp plan that, as far as I know, we're not delaying the work on that. And I think that comp plan is going to be a very, very controversial, long, drawn out process, just from what I'm seeing in wards 1 and 8. And maybe the other wards will start paying attention to it, but that's not going to be an easy slog. Sheila, if we keep the vacancies in police, as I mentioned the other day, we have a real problem with adequate public facilities and ever being able to approve any project for development if we don't get up to the authorized 124. And I would argue that by accepting that those positions aren't being filled, freezing them, we're going below the 124 number that's in the APF code. So I think we're pretty locked in here. I don't see the COLA as, I understand David's point that the COLA is an attempt to address the fact that so much of our city spending is for salaries and benefits, and the COLA is a really modest attempt to bring everybody into sharing to get the things into balance. But I just don't see how we can accept it unless we have the agreement. And frankly, I think offering an alternative to doing it is pretty much guaranteeing we're not going to get an agreement to do it. If we find $689,000 by cutting supplies and finance, whatever, then there is no negotiation, and also no negotiation going down the road. So I don't see how we solve this in the finance committee. I don't know how we're going to solve it in the council. Sheila? Ellie, after Sheila?
I suspect that the unions are following and watching.
I
And
think
they
you're right.
see the numbers that we see. And so, I agree. We have to put it back in the hands of the bargaining units. We have negotiated agreements that were done in good faith. And I think we've got to let that process work its way out. If you're asking them to find solutions, they usually do. But I don't know where they are now. We're not part of that process, but I think I agree with you. We've got to let that work itself.
So, committee. Oh, Ellie wants.
Yeah, just philosophically, when you look at this budget with the grants and et cetera, not all of these numbers are absolutes. A majority of them are estimated projections, and there's that unsaid exposure in these numbers. I don't understand why this is in a separate category, specifically because we are in the middle of a pandemic and we should have the upper hand in these negotiations. I just don't understand this, and I'm sorry for the editorial, but I think this is a no-brainer. And again, there's a lot of line items in the budget that are not committed values, specifically the grants. We could say, whoa, we're going to lose a lot of those grants. So I just think, right, but we're still putting them in the budget. The same with the union projection. So I speak my mind. Thank you.
But the grants are not negotiated. We have fair labor standards. We have laws about.
Right, I understand that. But again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, these are lives. I just think that they would be receptive to these negotiations, but I'm not in the room negotiating. Yeah.
Yeah. Fred, were you going to say something?
No.
Do your knuckles still hurt?
My knuckles hurt a lot, actually.
Committee, where I find myself is that I am in the same place we were with one of the other sections. I cannot support this section for this reason, and therefore would offer that we not take an action on this section 1 and tell the council at large why we couldn't. If there's any justice in the world, maybe we can hurry up the negotiations. I don't know what we do if we don't get a favorable result from the negotiations. Sheila, I like the notion that maybe it's not COLAs, maybe it's something else, but somewhere in this budget, and I think it's pretty tight elsewhere, I agree with Ellie that these are all estimates. None of these are hard numbers, but the things that we've negotiated are hard. They are reality. We don't have unilateral options on those. And so it feels to me like that's about the best we can do, is to say we cannot agree to section 1 for maybe at least at a minimum that we don't have a hard number that is a legal number in the COLA deferral. The rest of them, Sheila, you made peace with the rest of them. I can live with the rest of them. I kind of wish we could find $2,500 elsewhere for that one OPEB, but that's, in the scheme of things, I agree with David. If that's the only thing holding us up, we're actually in great shape. Because I'll just contribute. I'll offer $25,000 out of Fred's salary.
I was thinking David's salary, actually. He makes more than the rest of us put together.
No, seriously.
Yeah, but he is still not the highest paid city employee. That's another topic.
Well, who is? Because I need an updated sheet of this salary list.
You got
but he's willing to defer his COLA.
Yeah, right.
In all seriousness, though, that's the legitimate, while you guys are sitting here discussing this, I just can't I haven't had an answer to it, but I can't get out of my mind, all of this money talk, and we literally, that's the biggest burden, is the upper salaries. Why has that not been in? I'm sorry, and I know people are on who are included in that, but Why has that not been a part of, has that ever been done in the past? I'll start there. Let me ask a question first instead of complaining. In the past, have employees who make more than $100,000 in difficult times in the economy cut their salaries?
No.
I think I'd like to get the city attorney and Trish here. I think we're now starting to tread on some grounds where we may, and in fact, I do want to go in to a closed session of the Finance Committee. I'm very distraught that we're not scheduled to have a meeting tomorrow. I'm going to ask that we have a meeting tomorrow, but I think before we go further on this discussion, I'd like an advisory from our city attorney about discussing these matters.
Ross, I have transportation tomorrow at 10, so I hog the virtual world.
Well, that day we'll have to deal with that. But Mr. Lyles, I think that Dewan is raising a question that is within the province of the council to discuss, but I don't think it should be discussed in an open meeting.
Well, I mean, you can discuss salaries that are all public of all public employees in an open session. The question becomes how deep do you want to go into that discussion? And since I don't know that, we can always start with a closed session and figure it out. Maybe that whatever you discuss needs to be opened up. But at this point, I can't tell exactly how detailed you're going to get. But the salaries just by themselves, salaries and the names are all public and, applicable for discussion. Then again, if you're talking about reductions, then that's within your purview, reductions of salaries. You can talk about those generally anyway.
All right. So, Sheila, go ahead.
To Alderman Gay, to help understand how we got to where we are, many of our directors particularly have contracts that were negotiated based upon skills and experiences that they bring to the job. So they're not arbitrarily, given salaries, I would say for the most part, and maybe not at all. I hate to think that. But those salaries are based upon years and years and years of experiences. So we can't begrudge people who have those experiences and make salaries that are commensurate with the experiences that they bring to the job.
I completely agree with that.
Now, is it that some of the salaries may have been inappropriately negotiated in the past? Maybe. And that's not something I don't think we can go back and fix, but we can surely be cognizant of as we move forward. But I would say that all of our employees, no matter at what level on the rung they are, have brought a skill set that is commensurate with the salary that they're getting. So
I agree wholeheartly with that. Like, I don't want to knock any employee. I'm taking a look at a couple of resumes. Amazing. I mean, brilliant, a brilliant staff that we have. But, I just think that when we go through, financial hardships and we pick at the people on the bottom, that presents, significant challenges, especially in times like this, where we're talking about freezing job slots for $65,000, $75,000. I mean, when we could literally, just looking at this, you could trim like 3% off of each of the first 3 pages just until we make it through, just so we can get to the other side without freezing or cutting or anything. I mean, isn't that negotiable too? Isn't that a part of? I think that's being a part of a government. Realizing that at times you do have to negotiate and make unfortunate sacrifices for for the better good.
Well, I think that's the attempt of the COLA was to have some deferral there. I think, again, I'm encouraged by Director Gerald saying that we're not just talking about this year, we're talking about next year. I think for next year, we're going to need it even more. But I would turn it around. First of all, I hear what you're saying, and I think there are, by my count, 80 city employees who earn over $100,000. That's quite a few employees, and some employees earn considerably more than that. But I don't know how you get into parsing that out. Who's going to be Solomon and start cutting those babies? And as I point out, many of those are negotiated union contracts that you cannot go in as management and unilaterally touch. That's a morass.
May I also add to that we're talking about people attached to pay scales and pay steps.
Right.
So we have pay plans,
including the directors. Yeah, including the directors.
Right. So am I getting this correct? I just want to process. So those who are not directors can have their salaries negotiated and potentially be laid off, and all of this stuff. But if you are, okay, I see a lot of head shaking. Correct me then, because that's what it sounded like. So if you are a director, your salary cannot be negotiated?
Does anyone hear a voice? I hear a voice that sounds a lot like Dewan, but I can't see him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was doing something, but
okay.
Every person, every employee is either on the A scale, the F scale, or the P scale. Right. That pay plan is created and adopted as part of the budget process. When we negotiate for cost of living increases. We are very good in the city about being consistent in the way we apply cost of living increases. So if, for example, in the fire department, they negotiated for a 3% increase in their scale, in order to maintain the appropriate pay equity all the way through the scale for the non-represented ranks, that is applied through the whole scale. So when this proposal was made for a reduction, it was a reduction for all employees on all three of those scales. And so when you're talking about removing pay from certain elements of the employee population, however that's defined, then we're going to have to look at that very constructively in terms of how we adjust the pay scale, because there's no way to say, okay, Tricia Hopkins, you make X, I'm going to have you make X minus 25,000 as an example. That's not going to work without another way of looking at how that's going to be applied. And I also want to caution you that if we can't find reductions otherwise in this budget process in order to afford the cost of living increases, we're going to have to figure out how to afford it. And that may ultimately result in looking at how many days we can pay employees for during the course of a fiscal year. And that's a whole nother discussion around reductions in pay that may be happening through unpaid days off, which are called furloughs. I am participating in nationwide calls with other HR directors, and as David and Jody already implied, across this nation, there are governments that are already in trouble and are already instituting layoffs and furloughs and unfunded expectations through bargaining. And they are working through it, and they're working very rapidly through it, and they're experiencing it already in FY20.
So I wanted to go there and pick that thread up because we've been focusing on the COLA. I think we need to step back and I will probably put the city manager or the finance director on the spot. But my sense is the way we've been carrying this discussion on to date is that the management and the finance director have looked for as many places as they can to find this large amount of money, almost $700,000. And Trish, you took us to the next step that I was going to go to is, if we don't have this agreement with the unions and we can't find it other than cutting more supplies, which I just don't think there's anything, then I do think that the alternative is to discuss furloughs. And I'm not sure I know anybody that really wants to go there. I'm reading the same accounts you are, Tricia, that cities all over the country are failing. I said this the other day, maybe it was yesterday. I actually find we're in a very privileged position. We've been well managed over time, both financially and management-wise, and so we're not in dire straits yet. That doesn't mean we're not going to get there, but we are in a pinch. We're trying to figure out how to balance a budget for fiscal 21, and the administration has put forward an agenda to do that. One of them is to do these COLAs. I think the next step after that is furloughs. I don't know what else. I know Dewan is advocating some kind of haircut for people above a certain pay grade. I think that just gets entirely messy and untenable. I'll leave it to you to opine on that, Tricia, but I don't know that we have the time to do that, and I don't know that we have the budget in our city attorney's coffers to handle all of the legal actions that might bring. Yeah, Mike is shaking his head. No, we don't. But
we could use 2 more lawyers to do it.
Yeah, right.
Whatever you want to do.
We already handled enhancements. We're not talking about that anymore. It seems to me that we're down to, we need to get this COLA negotiation done. Failing that, it's going to have to be something like furloughs. I have no idea how many days we're talking about in furlough days. And I don't know what the council's appetite is for talking about that. But I would ask City Manager Gerald maybe to respond to that. Do you see any? I mean, I think you've already told us how you think you can cut to make this budget whole. If we don't get the COLA deferral, is furloughs the next step?
Well, I would hope not. I would hope that we are able to negotiate. I think the unions, as you said, are watching this, so they're probably listening to me. Hello. But I think they want to see how the council is going to receive this proposed COLA, and if there's not support, then it's going to be a tough negotiation. There's not a lot of good options. I mean, what we were looking at is a $3.8 million hole, and we filled a portion of it, about $700,000 with the COLA. And if you look at the percent of the budget that's salary, that certainly is a smaller percentage for this cut as a percent of the 3.8 million that we were looking for. I think this is the right answer, right? And I think that we need to get back to the bargaining table with the unions and talk to them, because I think that they understand the severity of the problem and are willing to work with us. They just want to see how the COLA is going to be received by the council before they sit down with us.
Well, I think that if they're watching, they've seen that we are feeling awkward about it, but I think now that we've introduced other alternatives, I'm feeling even more awkward about furloughs. But Sheila, you have your hand up. What is your thinking?
Well, furloughs is the furthest thing from my mind. And I would never have suggested it as a next step, because I think there's a lot that can be done prior to getting to that point. I think there are other options out there. And I'm hearing from other jurisdictions around the country that they are looking at different options, and they're not all negative things. You know, there are some, and I hate to put this out there because we have 3 directors on, and probably more that I can't see, asking the folks at that, like Dewan was talking about, the top, you know, percentage, giving up a portion of their salaries that's larger than the COLA. You know, so, and I'm not proposing that, but that's one of the options that other jurisdictions are looking at, and it's being done willingly. My big concern is if the unions, and I really don't think the unions are going to go with this. I really don't. But if they do, then what's the plan for July? You're already saying we can't fulfill the obligation for July of 22. You know, I hearken back to where our teachers are in Anne Arundel County. Keep, you know, denying their pay increase, and it gets to such a point where no one wants to work here because they can't count on their contracts being upheld. Their legally binding contracts being upheld. And we need to look harder. We need to find some other options. And Ross, I know that you don't think supplies and training are things we should cut.
I think we have.
And we have cut them, but there were years when we cut them out completely because they, you know, it may have been the year we've, you know, laid off 33 people. But we have to look at the other options, because if those unions agree to this now, we will be back at the table on July or January 1, trying to figure out how to uphold the obligation we're making today or in July. You know, so we're pretending that we can kick this can down the road and, you know, we're not going to come across it again. And that's the case. So let's deal with it.
All right. So I'll respond to that, but Fred wants to get in a word.
I don't know what makes anybody think that we'll be in a better position to deal with it in January than we are right now. That's not the way I see the economy going. I'm not an expert. Like, Ross was an economist. He knows probably better than I do, but I don't think anybody really knows, frankly, where we're going to be January 1. And I don't want to be in the position of having the conversations we're having right now at that time. I think that we ought to look at alternatives, but, you know, keep in mind when we're talking right here and right now that the union folks are listening, and you know, I don't think it's unreasonable to let them know that this is something we really don't want to, that we really don't want to lay people off. Nothing wrong with that, but, you know, let's not bargain away our strong suit, if we have any, you know, at a finance committee meeting, for goodness sakes. So, I mean, I think we ought to save part of this conversation for another day. And it may be healthy to talk about it in general terms, but when you're getting specific, other than to say, I think that there may be other alternatives, I don't really understand what we're accomplishing by getting into the specifics at this point. We can all think about specific things, and I don't know that in a public forum at this point, that's really a wise thing for us to do.
Well, let me draw you out on that a little bit more, though, Fred. It sounds to me like you're saying that we should agree to this section, noting that approval of it is predicated on the unions agreeing to the deferral of the COLA. It sounds to me like you're subscribing to City Manager Gerald's notion that we're going to have to touch income, which is the biggest portion, 70% of the budget, someplace. If the unions agree to it, this is the place to do it.
Well, as much as I would like to agree with our city manager, I fully agree with you that I don't think we're negotiating and we're whistling in the wind until we have some type. Until the union agrees to this COLA, and I have no reasonable belief that they're going to do this. And I think we need to look elsewhere. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's a given. Now, admittedly, our city manager is, in the middle of the negotiations, and I'm sure things go on there that he can't or shouldn't be telling us about, at least publicly. But, maybe he knows. I guess what I'm trying to say is he may know things we don't know. But, boy, if I were the union, it's sure not automatic. And I don't know. I think long and hard about accepting this. But, hey, that's me. I'm not a union negotiator, not hardly.
You started your discourse by saying this is complicated. I guess I'm looking for lunch, to be honest, but looking for some to resolve where we are on this section, some motion to move forward. We are perilously close. I am going to ask that we have a meeting, a finance committee meeting, it sounds like tomorrow afternoon, and also one Monday morning, because I see how far away we are in having our report done, and I do think we're going to need to have some time together to go over the report. But is there any way to close out, a motion to close out? Yes, City Attorney.
Yeah, I would just offer that respectfully, all of your opinions matter a great deal to management. With respect to the labor negotiations, I would say that a vote at this point to accept this particular provision gives us a wide panoply of options. A no vote or a vote that is counter to the city manager's representation here, especially in the labor negotiation area, really takes off the table some of the options and may hamstring discussions. And so what I think the city manager might be requesting at this point is that let the matter go forward. We'll bring all these options. I'm sure the city manager will bring all the different results from various scenarios back to the council. But at this point, we might be better positioned with a upvote to have all the options on the table when we go back to labor. Because the city manager would be at that point fully invested with the authority and power to negotiate the best deal for the city if it comes to that.
Just a second, Ellie. So I find myself coming around to that point of view. I actually thought that's where Fred was starting to handle head. My feeling is that the negotiations need to go forward. If the negotiations are successful, they're successful, we have a balanced budget. If they're not successful, then it'll be out of the finance committee's hand by then, most likely. Council's going to have to figure out things like turning to furloughs or some other more draconian kinds of things. But ultimately, the council is going to have to come up with a vote on a balanced budget. But so I thank you for those points, Mr. City Attorney. I'm beginning to think that there's some merit in that position. Sheila, and then Ellie.
First of all, furloughs have to be negotiated also. So that's not an arbitrary decision that we can make. And secondly, respectfully disagree. I'm not an attorney, but we've been burned before by approving things in the budget that we really didn't agree with. I think I would prefer that we take no position on this section 1. That does not stop the city manager from continuing with negotiations with the unions. But if we approve this section, in my mind, it's approving everything that's in Appendix A. And that includes all of the
what?
That are listed.
That's in what?
Appendix A.
Okay.
Appendix A, which includes all of the reductions on the summary of proposed restrictions to general fund handout. So I think we would be in essence agreeing to everything on this page. And I don't think that's not what I want to do. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I've agreed that I can live with 1 through 18. I cannot live with 19. And everyone on here, or at least the members of the committee, have said, we're still at the bargaining table. Let that play out. So I would prefer that, and I can make a motion that we support section 1, carving out number 19 on this list, which is the numbers that address the COLA, because we are still at the bargaining table.
All right, I'm not sure I can support that, but Ellie, and then we really do need to.
Yeah, I understand, and thank you for giving me the time. I think that I wish that Attorney Lyles had chimed in sooner, because I think that this was not productive on speculating on what the union will or will not do. Not even if they're not listening, the newspaper's listening. This is a public meeting, so we definitely, for the record, weakened the city's position during this discussion. And I would simply suggest that you would, if I was on the committee, I would approve this and just put in parentheses, subject to union negotiations, case closed. We can't continue this public discussion. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. That's where I find myself. Recommend approval subject to union negotiations. But Sheila, did you make a motion?
I made a motion that we could support section 1, carving out the COLA for the employees, pending continuation of the bargaining, the negotiations that are going on.
So that's similar to what Ellie just said, approving section 1 subject to the union.
Well, in part.
Yeah.
In part, but okay.
City attorney.
Yeah, yes, I think that the two are inconsistent. So if we're subject to the negotiations, I think that is right in line with where you want to be. If you carve it out, which I'm not sure the council has the authority to carve out the piece, what we're talking about in each of the ordinances is the bottom line number. The city manager has executive authority to kind of move things around that number if you approve the bottom line number. So to carve out and then say subject to is probably two different things. Subject to gets at, I think, what Alderman Finlayson wants to get to, and is consistent with also Alderman Tierney's presentation.
Well, you had me until you said the council doesn't have authority. I think the council does. We are the policy makers, but I agree with you that I like Alderwoman Tierney's wording better. Fred, let me ask you, 1 through 18, are you okay with those in the list of reductions from the city manager?
Well, for the sake of going forward, I guess I am, but in fact, not.
Right. And are you okay with the fact that 19 is subject to successful negotiations with the union? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a COLA. It could be some other amount that comes up to, or other action that comes up to the
exactly
89.
And that's the point I was making, because if you look at the ordinance, you're dealing with a number, right. And you have some breakouts, but the ordinance really controls your vote at the council meeting. And so this sheet is kind of an offshoot of that to give you more understanding, but it's the ordinance you're voting on has certain categories that you're voting on.
So where we are now is Sheila has made a motion. Is there a second?
No.
I don't either. I don't want to say carving out 19. I would like to say we approve section 1 subject to successful union negotiations. Is there, that is a motion. Is there a second for that motion?
I have a feeling. Again, I'll second it for the
Can you state it
purpose
again?
of taking a vote. I'm not sure I'm going to vote for it, though.
Can you state it again, Alderman Arnett?
That the Finance Committee recommends approval of Section 1, subject to successful union negotiations.
Question. What does that mean?
Well, that would mean that somehow the administration and the union come to this is what it means, come to an agreement about finding $689,000.
And if they don't?
Then the council will have to figure out what they're going to do. The council may decide not to approve the budget.
Well, by approving Section 1 in your motion, you're approving this amount without successful deliberations with the unions.
I don't have any choice. We don't have a final deliberation from the unions, with the unions.
So why would we make a motion to support it? You know, you have said any number of times that it's predicated on the resolution of bargaining, but now we're going to make a motion to approve this amount, even though there is no resolution.
Well, I know, but it's allowing the administration to go forward and complete the negotiations.
Well, they can do that anyway. They don't need this motion to continue bargaining. They're in bargaining now.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sheila. I think you're absolutely right. There's nothing that prevents us from going forward and with negotiations, whether we vote yes or no on this.
Okay, the city manager had his hands up.
Yeah, I would just suggest that if we're not successful in negotiating that, then we owe you an alternative for that cut. It's not that we would say, whoops, sorry, you guys need to find the savings. That would be incumbent on us to find other savings that would make up for that $689,000.
But my presumption is that by the fact that you haven't done that already, you find those other alternatives to not be very palatable. Okay,
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. We think that that's the most palatable
of a bad situation. All right, so we have a motion that was seconded. I'm sensing from both of my colleagues that while the motion was made and seconded, it's not going to be successful, but are we ready to take a vote on that motion?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So the motion, to repeat it, is that the Finance Committee recommends approval of Section 1 subject to successful union negotiations. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Nah.
No. The motion is defeated. Where do we go now, committee? I don't think we have an agreed upon action for Section 1. So do we do like we did with one of the other sections and just make no recommendation?
I think we do.
All right. Do we need to make a motion to make no recommendation on Section 1? Is that what you're making, Fred?
If we do, I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
All right. Is there further discussion? And for the Finance Committee report, we'll make some kind of notation that we couldn't resolve because we didn't have the union negotiations completed and we couldn't come up with any other alternative. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that it's not all about union negotiations. I mean, we talked about some other opportunities for savings. So I would prefer that we say that the fact that union negotiations haven't concluded is one thing, but we're looking at other opportunities for savings. We've talked extensively about vacancies. You know, we've talked about, employee salaries. And so there's any number of other things. So I would include,
All right, well, we can talk about the report when we have an actual report in front of us to edit. The motion is before us, no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to take no action on section 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We do have still items of unfinished business. One of them is we have yet to talk about page 37 of the budget report that is talking about the unduplicated appropriations. We have still before us some discussion about the staffing table, and we did get a supplemental bit of information from finance on FTEs. And then we have all of these things which I'm fearing we're just never going to have time to get to. It may have to be parking lot issues, which are deputy city manager position, review of financial policies. I do think offline, we do have a resolution to the University of Maryland request from planning and zoning. So I think we can strike that. We were going to talk about job titles in the mayor's office. I'm not sure we have time or that there's much we can do, or even that's a budget item per se, but I'll leave that up to you. We had the discussion that had been initiated about potential liability regarding a fitness trainer at Pip Moyer, and we had the OEM conversions. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling I've got this afternoon to work on the draft report, get it to you so you can start working on it as well. And I do think we need to have a closed session set to discuss some of these issues that Alderman Gay raised, and I also have some things to talk about, but I think since they are personnel sensitive, are things better done in closed session, which I would propose that we schedule for tomorrow afternoon.
I am available tomorrow afternoon, assuming my hand surgeries. It's in and out. It shouldn't be a problem. 2 o'clock?
I have a 3 o'clock intergovernmental meeting. Can we do noon or 11:30?
No, I can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. What time is your appointment, Fred?
10:45. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know if he's on time or not.
What about 1 o'clock?
I think I'd have a good chance of being able to make that. Yeah, if I'm a few minutes late, there's no reason you guys can't start without me.
So this would be a closed session. He is raising his hand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that the TV crew would be unavailable after 3. So I just wanted to let you
All right,
guys
so
know that.
we'll do it from 1 to 3. And then I do think we need to schedule, just in case we needed to finalize the report, a meeting Monday morning at 10, which will be to review the final report.
Mr. Chair, I would like for us to take a position officially on the OEM conversions.
Well, then, but that'll have to be, I think that can be done tomorrow at the 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ross, can I call you later this afternoon? Are you going to be around?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Got some errands to run, but I should be available too.
Alderman Gay has his hand up.
Yeah, all right. So I have a crazy
I wish
question.
you'd stop touching my face like that.
I know that. I hate that it's up there. I'm gonna try to get a mouse or something. But in regards to the 600, how much was it? $679,000 or something that you said?
689.
89. Would it be possible, considering that these constraints due to the COVID-19 virus, could we potentially take money that we're receiving from the county and put it towards this?
I don't think so, but I don't know. But I think that's really, so the city attorney's saying no. I don't know. I think what we've done, the committee has put this back in the hands of the administration and the negotiations. It will come back again to the city council. We've not seen the last of this discussion, but we have, we've finished our votes on the ordinance at this point, and
I have one more quick thing.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chair, this is on our, we amended the agenda to include a discussion of the COVID-19 funding. And we had asked. Director
yes,
General to speak to it. So it is on the agenda for today.
right.
Alderman Gay, go ahead.
So's lunch.
Yeah, I was going to say. You
No,
were
I
saying
mean,
something else?
my in regards to that, my concerns are pretty clear. I think that the council should be just in the conversation from the get-go in regards to what happens with that funding. What are the restraints with that funding? Because as Mike just shook his head, no, obviously there are some requirements of what we can and cannot do with it. I'd like to know what that is. And I also like to just have a rough idea of what the plan is so far. And I also like to negotiate for a little bit more, to be honest.
Well, early in the meeting, City Manager Gerald said that they fully intend to include the council. Sheila apparently put together a list which he's going to share with the rest of us about potential uses, which David was receptive to. So I think we are all going to be taken care of. I think we feel the same way you do. Those are not directly yet related to the budget deliberations, but certainly cast an overweening implication for it. So we have to wait to see what the city manager is doing with that. That's not. I don't know that that'll be done before Monday, will it, David? Even those discussions?
No, I don't think so. No.
So for us right now, my drive is to get a report done. And those things are very important, but they're after this. Sheila.
On the agenda today, we asked to have Director Gerald speak to the COVID-19 funding. And I know there are restrictions on what he can share with us, but I would ask that we give him an opportunity, because we're not the only ones listening. We're not the only ones asking questions. If we could have him, City Manager Gerald, did I call him Director Gerald, to share with us any restrictions and what you know about that funding that's to come to the city.
In 5 minutes or less.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. So what we're talking about is a portion of the $101 million that the county, Anne Arundel County got from the federal government. We're negotiating with the county and talking with the county and working together with the county to determine what part of that is going to come to the city. The first slice off the top is going to go to the health department because they're incurring the greatest share of the costs. This has to be used on COVID-related items. So that's the big requirement. It can't be used to backfill for revenue that cities and counties have lost because of it. It has to be used directly for COVID-related actions.
So
we're soliciting from all of the departments ideas and suggestions and whatever you can come up with that we can put on the list so we can have the discussion with the county. That's where we are right now is brainstorming ideas. It can be used to help the community, to help small businesses, to help with feeding, a lot of things that are associated with the COVID. So that's where we're at right now. We've been negotiating with the county to try and get a fair share. So that is ongoing. There's been a number that's thrown around that I'm not going to mention because that is not the number yet. It's still being discussed. But we're very optimistic that the county's going to be fair with that and going to share a good portion of that with us. And so now we just need to show them where we plan to spend that money. When we get that money, it'll have to come to the council to be appropriated. So you will definitely be involved with the money, whatever money we get from the county, because it'll have to be appropriated in the budget. It's for the period March to December 30th. So all the money has to be spent by December 30th.
Okay.
And what I presented to David, if you recall yesterday when we had this discussion briefly, and we were talking about the position of community caring services. And he asked that I write up a description of what that would look like. So I did that yesterday and sent it to him for consideration, with the understanding that it is, and the way I wrote it, and I'll send it to all of you today, was that it would be a certified social services position that would help with any number of community issues as it relates to COVID-19, from food shortages to jobs, to housing, to health-related issues, to juvenile issues. There's any litany of things that are going to be, that we're going to be facing as a result of this pandemic. So that I did send to Director Gerald already. Last week, I spoke to the mayor in anticipation of these funds coming about giving direct grants to small businesses. And I mean the really small businesses, the true mom and pop shops that aren't going to be able to take advantage or haven't been able to take advantage of federal funds. And so I'm hoping that will be part of the usage of some of this money, that it goes right back into some of our small businesses that need a quick infusion of cash to keep them going. So those are two of my asks for this funding.
Yes, Duan.
Yeah, and just in response to David, you mentioned that it had to be directly related to a COVID-19 issue. And so how do we know that? How do we know which communities to put the money in if we haven't done, like full steam testing all across the board to know which communities are really affected?
Well, the effects go beyond just the people that have the disease. It goes to those that are businesses that Sheila mentioned that had to close, to at least partially close down, where like restaurants that just have takeovers. They clearly are directly affected by COVID because they had to close.
And are we?
So it goes beyond just those that actually have the disease.
Understood. I'll just ask this straight up then. Can we be sure that a majority of this funding, whatever it is, like I said, I hope we keep negotiating for more. Can we be sure that a majority of it will not be spent in one particular area, one particular ward, one particular street?
Well, that certainly is our goal. And I don't think the mayor would ever, and I don't think the council either would ever allow that to happen. Again, this has to come back to the council for appropriation. So I don't think you all would allow that to happen. So no, I can't guarantee anything associated with this right now, but I can't see that happening.
All right. Is there a motion?
To adjourn, yes, there is.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Takia, I'll call you about the meetings, but we definitely have to have one tomorrow. I don't see how we can avoid it. And unfortunately, I bet we're going to need one Monday morning and be printing stuff hot off the press to get it to the council Monday night. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.